Good morning, students. For today's class, I will be giving you instruction on what we will be doing in our next class. So, I'll be discussing my lesson plan with you guys. And firstly, to start off this instructional video, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Vishal Sen. My student ID is s11148133. And to begin with, this is a geography lesson, and I will be discussing the concepts that we are going to discuss in our next class, so that you are familiar with what we are going to do in our next class. So basically, the subject is geography, as you all know, and the lesson duration is for 15 minutes, right? I'll be taking this 15 minutes class. Actually, this is simply the instructional video, and I'll be explaining more about what will be discussed in the class later. So this is for year 11, right? So the brief summary of the lesson, right? The brief summary. This lesson will focus on the topic climate change. As you all know, climate change is one of the important factors that we are facing in the Pacific Island today, right? So this lesson will focus on the topic climate change. In this lesson, student will learn what actually climate change is, right? So this lesson will focus on the definition of climate change and the main factors that is affecting for a negative impact of climate change, right? This is what we're going to discuss in our next class. So first of all, this lesson duration will be for 15 minutes. This lesson will discuss the definition of climate change and negative impact of climate change. There will be question and answer session in class, so students can share their prior knowledge which they have learned from their previous forms. So yeah, basically we will be doing climate change today. So as you all know, climate change is one of the major factor which is affecting our Pacific Island countries, right? And as a Pacific Island student, you should be aware of this term. Everywhere we can see there is awareness program going on climate change and the negative impact of climate change, right? So moving on, that was the brief summary of this lesson. Moving on, the resources, right? The teaching resources that I as a teacher will use to teach you is the year 11 geography textbook, right? So basically this topic comes under year 11 geography textbook, right? And I have also prepared a lesson notes for you guys, and obviously I'll be using whiteboard marker, worksheets, some visuals, right? Visuals in terms of photographies, some videos, right? And I'll be showing to you what climate change actually is and how it is affecting our Pacific Island countries. So these are the resources which I will use in teaching you, all right? When we move further on, there comes a student resources. So in student resources, this is the part where you need to have these things with you while I conduct the class. These are some things that you must have in order to attend this class. So first of all, student resources. The student should have year 11 geography textbook, which you will get from the library, right? Blue pen for writing notes, pencil for drawing the diagram, eraser, ruler and exercise book for writing your notes down. Right? So these are the things which you have to have with you in in this class. So basically, moving on to the learning outcomes, learning objectives. By the end of this lesson, students should be able to define the term climate change. Right? It is very important that you know the definition of climate change, right? Because this is a very, very, very important term for us here in Pacific Island, that climate change is affecting us and we are experiencing the effects of climate change these days, right? So yeah, one of the learning outcome is students should be able to learn the definition of climate change and describe the negative impact of climate change. I must say there are many, many, many negative impacts of climate change, right? And we are facing these impacts in the Pacific Island, and as we can see around our country and around our islands, that we are facing these impacts, these negative impacts, right? So basically this is our learning outcome. So moving on, I'll be taking this class will be for 15 minutes and not taking much of your time. The time allocation for lesson opening, right? To start up a lesson, it will be for 2 minutes. It will be for 2 minutes, right? For 2 minutes I will recap on the previous lesson, right? That is my activity, and student activity is to read, observe and listen, right? Basically, if you listen, you will understand better, right? Then moving on from the opening of the lesson, followed by the introduction of the topic. So after opening this lesson, I will be introducing the topic climate change, what climate change actually is and its negative impact, right? So I, as a teacher, my activity will be introduce the topic climate change. So I will be introducing the topic climate change, and you as a student, your job is to listen and jot down important points that is being highlighted by me. Okay, you will follow your exercise book, and later on we will be moving on to discussion part, right? In this discussion part, I will be discussing the definition of climate change and some of the negative impacts of climate change that we are facing here in Fiji. All right, so I will be, as a teacher, I will be using the year 11 geography book. I will give definition of climate change and give some of the negative impacts that are facing today here, that are being faced by the Pacific Island countries. All right, so this is the teacher activity, and student activity is to listen to what the teacher is saying and follow in the notebook, right? And jot down points. They should write the important points that I have highlighted in my explanation, in my discussion actually. So in discussion part, student will be given a visual where they can see and understand much better. All right, and they have to highlight the important points in their lesson notes. I will be giving out lesson notes, so they have to highlight the important points which I will be discussing in the next class. Right, moving on, I'll be giving some group activities about a pair of folk. Student will be divided into a student will be divided into pairs, right? Keeping in mind the number of students in the class, I'll be dividing students into pairs and make them sit together. and I'll give some work, some small activity that the student will do in pairs. So after the discussion there will be 2 minutes presentation, right? 2 minutes presentation. So in that 2 minute, one of the group member from each group will present their answers. For example, like if for group 1, I will be giving the definition of climate change. So what you have to do, the student activity, the student should present their definition of climate change, right? So they will present in from one group, one person will be presenting the definition of climate change, and they will present to the whole class, right? So that is very important that you note down the points when I am discussing the lesson. And yeah, I'll definitely be giving out worksheets, right, which will be done by you, right? And later on I'll collect it and I'll mark the activity that you have done on the worksheet. So student will have to share their answers. So not taking much of your time, I'll move to the conclusion part of this lesson, right? To conclude this lesson, it will be for 2 minutes, right? I'll discuss climate change, and I'll be asking students if they have not understand anything in this lesson. They are free to ask me questions, and I'm ready to clear all their doubts, right? For example, some of the students are slow learners, right? So they can ask me question at the end of the class if they are not sure about anything, and definitely I'll be clearing their doubt. I'll be giving them brief explanation, right? And student will ask, right? They will, so it's like if you don't understand anything, you can ask me, and I'll be giving an good explanation. And I don't mind repeating myself, right? So it's for your benefit that I must ensure that at the end of the class my learning objective is being achieved. Student should learn the definition of climate change and the negative impacts of climate change. So yes, we'll wrap up this lesson. After that we'll wrap up this lesson, and I'll link the class to the next lesson, right? And for next lesson we will be talking about the benefits, we will be talking about the social impacts of climate change, right? This social impact we will discuss in next lesson. So I'm just giving a brief intro about the next class, right? That what we are going to do. So when you come in next class, you are prepared, right? So yes, so that was my instructional video, that was my instruction for you students. So I hope all of you understood what we are going to do in our next lesson, right? I hope that is clear enough, and if anything you can ask me in the next class, right? I will be answering all your questions. If you have not understand anything, you can ask me, right? Thank you very much for listening, and best of luck. Thank you.